welcome to Unclouded Eye. I'm Ashley Brooks.
And I'm Ty Gowan.
And we have your weekly astrological forecast and some cosmic chit-chat and general oddities.
We are locked in and ready to go, and I just realized that I need to pee. So this isn't be that vibe for the whole episode.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're going forward.
We're going forward.
We're going forward.
All right.
Bravely forward.
You don't need a break?
I don't need a break because I know I did it to myself, and we're just going to have to keep going.
It's going to create a sense of urgency that the listeners will pick up on, and they'll get really excited and nervous.
Yeah, let me look directly without shame to the camera right now and say, if you guys pick up on anything different this episode, could you drop a comment and let me know? I want to know if my pee vibes are off.
Your pee vibes?
I don't know. I had to go.
So I recently...
I'm still drinking tea, sorry.
Yeah, you're just going to make it worse
I know.
for yourself. I recently read this hypothetical question that was about kind of off-putting superpowers that aren't that effective, basically.
Okay.
Superpowers that are just kind of weak. And one of the options was passing the need to pee to somebody else, which I think is way more effective than the person would have guessed.
I think that would be super effective. Okay, so let's break this down for a second.
Right.
So you're an X-Men, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you're like a D class X-Men.
Yeah, it's the only thing you can do.
Storm's out there. She's an S class. You know,
Yeah.
like she's changing the weather. They're fighting the bad guys that are coming along. I was going to say one of the robots, but they wouldn't have to pee.
Yeah.
Imagine like you're going against Magneto, right?
Right.
At the end of the world, the X-Men can't stop you. But you've been downing tea since like 4 o'clock in the morning because you know that this fight's going down at noon.
Yeah.
You've been holding it the whole time.
Yeah.
So bad that it's at the point where it hurts your teeth. You know,
It's really bad. It needs to be addressed right now.
Magneto is coming and he's about to lay down the law on like the top tier X-Men. Ready?
Yep.
And you walk out of the X-Men mansion and you look up at Magneto in the sky right before he just destroys everyone and you go, no. That would be so effective, I think.
Yeah, he
like,
would have to go deal with it right away.
Right away. Like
Either
if you
that or he pees his pants in front of everyone and then it throws him off his game.
And if you can damage someone's character, that's worse than killing them.
Yeah, I mean, he's never going to be looked at the same way again with the same level of power or threat.
Magneto piss boy.
Yeah.
That's what that would be.
But even for regular people, like if this was a superpower you possessed, I mean, just think you're in line and there's a bunch of people. Like you could just pass it to people in front of you in line. You could pass it to somebody who's approaching you that you don't want to talk to. There's so many ways that could be useful.
I promise you that I would get so creative with this power.
Yes.
I would unabashedly, unashamed be using it every day, all the time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would probably rarely actually go myself.
For sure. I like right now, I would give it to producer Nick, like so that I could be super present in this version and not even have to think about it. You know?
Not have it in the back of your mind.
Nope, because it's itching there right now in the back, but I'm going to be focused and I'm going to give the people what they want.
Okay.
And that's not, and that's a deep dive into the Salem Witch Trials today.
I am so ready for that. I went to Salem for the first time earlier this year, which is
I couldn't believe that this was your first time heading down to Salem.
I know. It was really fun. And we went in February, which was not the time that a lot of people go, but I kind of liked that because it was still very busy for February.
Perfect. Yeah.
But they had an ice sculpture festival and it was like around Valentine's Day. So it was cool to see the city around that time. And it was also very warm for February.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it was nice out. And the ice sculpture started to melt by the second day we were there because of that.
Perfect. I mean, like, that's awesome because some of the best stuff you can do in Salem are the shops.
Yeah.
You know, and going to the museums and going to the graveyard, you know.
Yes.
And you really can't get into any of that stuff in October.
It's true. And I'm sure it's a vibe in and of itself. But that's why I wanted my first time to be a different time of year, just so we could fully get immersed in everything.
Totally. I did it. I've only done it once in October.
Yeah.
And I would never do it again.
No, I'm not a big crowd kind of gal.
No, me either. And it was just like, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to wander and enjoy myself. And the vibe was cool. It was a giant Halloween party.
Yeah.
But like it was sloppy, like there's just so many people and there's nowhere to park at that point.
Yep.
It's like walking through the streets of Salem with like your safety arms up to make sure that like your bubble is preserved is not an ideal day out,
But it was such a magical town. I kind of like that they've leaned into the supernatural element. Just seeing taxis drive by that have witches on the side. It's like, I'm home.
Yep.
This is it.
I felt safe.
Yeah, exactly. Halloween 24/7. So I'm going to check in with you at the end of the episode about how you're doing with your need to pee. But for now, you want to jump into the forecast for
Let's
that week?
do that. Let's do that.
All right. So we're looking at December 2nd through the 8th. We're officially in December now, and we're in Sagittarius season. So we have on Monday, December 2nd, we have 2 transits happening. We've got Mercury, trine, and Chiron.
I love it.
At 1:16
Those are two
a.m.
of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 of your boys, Mercury, trine, Chiron.
I imagine Mercury, trine, Chiron means that like words of healing.
Oh my gosh, exactly.
Really?
Yes, because Mercury governs communication, Chiron governs healing. So you're able to use your words to inspire, to uplift, to help people, or maybe you are hearing something that's going to bring that to you. But either way, communication is flowing in a manner that's going to produce healing for people.
Perfect.
So that's at 1:16 a.m., but we're feeling it all day on Monday the 2nd. And we also have Venus trine Uranus, which is a fun transit. That's at 9:43 a.m., another one we feel throughout the day. And this is going to bring new creative ideas, maybe sudden insights, because Venus can govern artistic projects and creativity, and Uranus has a somewhat unexpected or surprising element to it when it's in its positive connotation, which it is here. So
Perfect.
We might also have some nice surprises in relationships. You might get like surprise flowers from somebody, or, maybe a friend checks in with you. It just feels like exciting and like you're just connected to that energy.
I got to probably bring some flowers over to my nephew that day then, because he called me last night to let me know if I had any ash, any flowers.
Any flowers?
Yeah, and it was out of the blue. My nephew's 3, and so like his dad called me and he wanted to talk, but
Right.
It was the funniest thing. He said that he didn't want the flowers that I had. He wanted the dirty flowers.
Like flowers that had been outside for a while or
I
something?
think so.
Yeah.
I think that's what he meant.
Yeah.
And so I got to bring him some dirty flowers this weekend.
What is your plan there?
I don't know. I got to get creative, I think. I think maybe buy a carnation and let it wilt a little bit.
Yeah, like maybe leave it out overnight or
I use the energy of this day to come up with that idea.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. Okay. Then on Wednesday, the 4th, we have 3 transits happening. And the first 2 are a little more difficult. So at 5:15 a.m., we have Mercury opposing Jupiter. And this transit can make for very unfocused energy, scattered thinking to start the day. You might be all over the place. You could be jumping from topic to topic.
That's just a normal day for me.
It's a normal
Welcome to
Wednesday
inside
for
my
you.
brain.
Yeah, there's a lot of chattering. You might find that you're kind of hyperactively saying stuff. You might put your foot in your mouth and say something maybe you shouldn't have. No filter.
Yep. At any given point during the day, on Wednesday, I promise you, Rocco Beat City Hall, the song from Rocco's Modern Life, will be playing on loop in my head, because that's something that I deal with on the regular.
Really?
I haven't watched Rocco since I was probably 8, 9, 10. But Rocco fought City Hall. Rocco fought corporate America. They were big and he was small. Rocco fought City Hall.
Wow. For me, from that era, the one that I've got is Killer Tofu from Doug.
Oh my God.
The beats.
Yes.
Yeah.
The beats.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, Killer Tofu.
So good.
So that'll be in my head.
So think of us on Wednesday, everyone that's listening out there. What's your song? Yes.
What's your 90s cartoon theme song?
That has wedged itself in your brain so hard and pushed out for me, it pushed out all the math. I can, Rocco Fought City Hall is living where I really need to hold on to algebra.
Yeah.
I've released the algebra into the wild.
Yeah. There's something about Rocco Fought City Hall that you need.
I need it.
You need that energy.
Fight capitalism.
Yeah. For me, it just led me to vegetarianism, Killer Tofu.
That's what it was. Me, I had to fight the man.
Yeah. Sun squares Saturn at 11:18 a.m. We don't want to do work this day. If you think about that first transit, that's already kind of giving that energy. But then Sun squares Saturn, There's responsibilities are weighing heavy. You don't want to deal with them, but you also might feel bad just completely blowing them off. So balance is the key here.
Okay.
Making sure you're getting a little work done, then finding a way to reward yourself, enjoy yourself, and not beating yourself up if the desire to work isn't there.
Cool. Shout out to my coworkers. Let's take it easy, you guys. I'm doing the extra long lunch today.
Yeah, you can help each other out, make sure everyone gets a break, but keep it fun. Maybe you're joking around while you're working, whatever, is appropriate there.
Perfect. Yeah.
And then finally, at 1:51 p.m., we have Venus sextile Neptune, which is very dreamy, creative, imaginative, good for painting, drawing, anything that's artistic, maybe writing, but not super logical writing, more like poetry or stream of consciousness type stuff.
Yep, I get that.
Yeah. Alrighty.
And we like sextiles, right?
We do.
They're like a weaker trine.
Yeah, they're like a gentle blending of the energy, whereas a trine is really lucky and dynamic and positive. A sextile is like a gentle, softer version of that.
Cool.
A little more subtle. Thursday, December 5th, we have the sun conjunct Mercury. And if you remember, Mercury is retrograde. So
right, we're going backwards right now.
Yeah, we are going backwards. And so the Mercury has moved back to conjunct with the sun. They are together in the sky. So it's also known as being in the heart of the sun. When a planet is conjunct the sun, it's called in the heart of the sun.
That's where Thor's hammer was forged.
It was conjunct the sun.
He was Thor conjunct the sun.
Wow.
In the heart of a dying star.
There's actually an aspect pattern in astrology called Thor's hammer, and I have one in my chart.
Tell me everything.
Okay.
Or Patreon.
Yeah, Patreon.
Okay, Patreon.
We'll do that on Patreon. If you want to come over, in one of our Q&A videos, we'll talk about Thor's hammer aspects.
Please. I'm signing up right now.
Okay. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do that.
I would do it for you, Ash. I would do it.
So yeah, the sun conjunct Mercury, 9:17 p.m. We might find a lot of sudden ideas coming in. We could find flashes of insight, flashes of understanding. And this is considered a genius aspect. So it's a lot of people born when the sun is exactly conjunct Mercury are geniuses or are thought of as being ahead of their time, like Tesla, Edgar Allan Poe. There's a lot of people that I'm drawing a blank on more, but that just to give you an example.
I mean, I wish I could help you out, but like these innovators.
Yeah, exactly. And people that maybe weren't appreciated at the time they were alive, just because their ideas were so
too far ahead of
futuristic.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Like those people became famous more posthumously.
There's another Patreon episode. I want to go through a list. Mm-hmm. I want to find some more.
Oh, we can for sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so knowing that on that day, you might find that there's some big ideas coming through. Make sure that you are carrying a notebook or you have like your notes app on your phone. You're just jotting stuff down because the thing about these ideas is that they tend to be a little more ephemeral, like they come and they go. So you want to make sure that you're telling somebody, you're writing stuff down.
Hey, pregnant mothers, push them out today.
Yeah, make those geniuses, genius babies.
Genius babies today.
All right. Friday, December 6th, kind of a big day. We have Mars retrograde starting.
Oh my God. That's going to be so bitchy.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm calling it what it is.
No, it's true because Mars only goes retrograde once every year and a half. So we have Mercury retrograding every 4 months. It retrogrades. And then we have Venus retrograding like a little over a year. So Mars it's not happening quite as often. But when it does, we really feel it because these personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, those retrogrades tend to impact us more. They're closer. The planets are closer to us. We can feel their pull a little bit easier. So Mars retrograde begins at 6:33 p.m. Eastern time on Friday, December 6th, and it lasts until February 23rd.
It's weird that you say that because Mars retrogrades the moment I land on my airplane for vacation. So what's staying ahead for me right now, thanks to Mars?
So Mars retrograde can really decrease energy. It can make us more tired, more grouchy, less wanting to kind of engage with the outside world. Or, I'm not saying that all of us are going to suddenly become hermits for 2 months, but we might find that we need more time to recharge, to refresh ourselves. We could get drained more easily. People could just be crankier. Energy levels are affected.
So I'm going to flip that upside down and say that's actually the perfect time for a vacation.
It is the perfect time for a vacation as long as you are not overpacking your schedule with all these things to do.
Who, me? Right?
Who? Little me.
Little me. Aries. There we go.
So Mars, as I mentioned in a previous episode, Mars is going to be opposing Pluto off and on throughout the next few months. So because of this retrograde that's dragging it out. So there is more of a tension with this transit. There's more of this tension of feeling oppression. You might feel really exhausted by people around you because of this combination of energies.
God, that's like a main winter anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I might not even notice.
Yeah. Yep. So the key here is to make sure you're taking care of your physical health, because Mars does govern the physical body. Because if we push too hard for too long, we can get sick, we can injure ourselves, or we could just deplete our life force. So just
that's good advice.
Check in on yourself. And then also on Friday the 6th, we have Mercury squaring Saturn at 8:53 p.m. And this could create some perfectionistic thinking. We could be getting a little bit hypercritical of ourselves or others. So making sure that you're taking a step back and trying to be kind to both yourself and other people.
Okay.
We don't need to do that. Okay, Saturday, December 7th, there's a lot going on, but this is it for the week. Sunday is a quiet day. So at 1:13 a.m. on Saturday, we have Venus entering Aquarius. It's going to be there till January 2nd. Venus in Aquarius is eclectic. It's all about interesting new ways of creating. Like you might find that you might get more abstract ideas for art or for writing, like things that are a little bit outside your normal mode of creating. Like maybe if you've always crocheted, you're going to suddenly want to design a dress, you know, or maybe if you have always done pottery, you're going to decide you want to oil paint.
And on top of Mercury and Uranus this week, do you think that would stack type of thing?
I think so. Yeah, there could be more of a scattered thing. Like you might decide, oh, I'm going to go to the craft store and buy supplies for 4 different hobbies, but Mars is retrograde, so I'm too tired to do any of them now.
Oh, God. Okay, Ash, that was really good summary. Yep, I'm good.
Also with romance side of things for Venus, Venus in Aquarius is more about connecting intellectually and kind of connecting through ideas and really finding that you're maybe falling in love with somebody's ideas rather than just, you know, physical things.
Cool.
Venus is conjunct Pluto at 9:08 a.m. So Venus moves into Aquarius. Pluto is newly in Aquarius. So they're going to meet there at the beginning degrees of that sign at 9:08 a.m. So this can create an intensity with creativity and with love. We could feel really magnetically pulled toward a person or an idea or a thing. We could just feel like, I got to put everything I have into this. But then by the next day, you might be like, okay.
Oh my gosh.
So again, there's a lot of like almost flip-flopping or just putting a lot of energy into something and then getting exhausted.
It feels like I'm being personally attacked this week.
Yeah,
like
this
these
is
are all
coming
my
for you.
these are all my weaknesses and triggers that I'm hearing out loud of things that I suffer from anyway.
That's kind of what astrology can be good for. I mean, obviously there's many positives too, but it can help us to recognize these things in ourselves and better ourselves, I guess.
Always here for that.
Yeah. So then there's still 2 more things happening on Saturday. The sun opposes Jupiter at 3:57 p.m. Eastern time. It's very excitable energy, very adventurous, but again, scattered. We've got a very scattered week. It feels a little hyperactive. It seems like you're almost reacting to that energy.
Yeah.
Like you've had some caffeine as well.
I'm very caffeinated.
Yeah. Which, as if you've caught some previous episodes, Ty doesn't usually do caffeine.
I need it today.
Yeah, today you need it.
I'm going to need it this whole week.
You're going to need it until Mars is out of retrograde.
That's 2 months.
Yeah. No, I mean, take some naps too.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And then finally, we have Neptune retrograde ending at 6:42 p.m. on Saturday the 7th. So that's over. It's been in retrograde for months. This is going to feel really good. So months ago, we talked about Neptune retrograde, but to rehash what that was, Neptune retrograde kind of creates this fog where we have to really rely on our intuition, our gut instincts, because we can't always see what's coming our way. It can make it harder to use your senses to fully engage with the world. So now that this is over, the fog is starting to lift. So you're like, okay, over the last 5 months, now I'm here. Now I'm in the middle of the forest, but at least I can see the way out now and I can start to get my bearings around me. But the important thing is to not kind of just completely write off the intuition just because you're not necessarily needing to rely on it as much.
Okay.
Just continue to strengthen that muscle.
That's good advice. Yep.
Yep. So that's the week. That's what we've got.
That's it?
That's all.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Those 200 things are all.
This week's going to try us a little bit, I think. It's going to test our resolve.
Yeah, it's a lot. You might be all over the place. Again, resting and taking care of yourself, making sure you are napping. Maybe don't spend all your money at the craft store or wherever you're going or out on a fancy date with somebody. Just make sure you're
Try to focus.
Maybe pick one thing to start. You can always go back to the craft store next week and get more stuff.
Sage advice.
Yeah.
Sage advice.
Yeah.
Well, you ready to dive into my little trial of, not my trial.
It's not your
My little
trial.
Story of the Salem Witch Trials?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So what I'm kind of interested in is now we have this podcast, and there's people listening to us across the country and different countries even.
Yes.
So growing up here in Maine, we're so close to Boston, we're so close to Salem that it was part of the curriculum for us. And I remember 4th grade and 5th grade, we learned so much about the Salem Witch Trial. But I wonder what, listeners in California, listeners in Canada, listeners in, I think there's Australia is
and
a big
England.
One. That's right. Do you guys know much about the Salem Witch Trials? Talk about it. What have you heard?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, either reach out to us on social media or send us a message. Let us know what did you learn when you were a kid? Is this something you heard about later on?
I'm just super interested because I imagine that in England, for instance, why would you learn about the Salem Witch Trials when you guys were the OGs for wiping witches out?
Right. Maybe they learned about different witch trials there.
Yeah. Have you ever, I think it's called the Mele Maleficarum or whatever.
No.
It's like a book that taught you how to kill witches.
That's horrible.
It's horrible, but England was really good at, putting them to the stake.
Yeah. They had witch hunters.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
So gross. But anyways, I'm going to get the Spark Notes version of the Salem Witch Trials for maybe people who aren't from the New England area.
Okay.
Okay. So I actually found out some stuff that I didn't know about before. Like the fact that the Salem Witch Trials, it kind of started because of the King William War, which started in 1689. It kind of affected people in Canada and upstate New York. So these people were fleeing that war, so they went south. And one of the most reputable, safest areas in 1689 is the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So these new immigrants end up putting a strain on resources, and we know as humans we don't love that so much. So tempers grew, and anxiety ran really high when all of these immigrants are coming from the north to the south. A man named Samuel Paris, who was described as a cold and forceful man, also around the same time becomes Salem's first minister. But just 3 years later, after becoming the minister in Salem, the influx of people who are others, right?
Yeah.
His 2 daughters both begin having fits and tantrums, kind of almost like seizures. But I looked it up and it wasn't. They just had these fits that they threw.
Right.
So they thought that it was just a medical problem, which it was, until another young girl in the community begins having fits as well. So the doctor did what any good doctor would do, right? And said, this isn't a medical problem at all. It's the devil.
That was common back then.
Yep. We're just going to throw that diagnosis right out the window. So obviously, with the correct diagnosis surely defined as Satan, it was now...
A touch of Satan.
Right, exactly. A little touch of Satan's making you do the dance at home. So we've got these girls. The preacher Paris's children are 9 and 11, and the unrelated girl is 12 years old. And so the adults ask these girls, now thinking that, it's Satan that's coming to them, who caused this? What did you see? What do you know? How did the devil affect you? And so they push these poor girls so hard that the girls start naming names. So the girl's name's Sarah Osborne, who's an old woman in town. They also name a homeless woman Sarah Good, and a Caribbean slave. Her name was Tituba for their condition.
So all people that really can't defend themselves very well.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it just people these girls saw, and so scapegoat.
Kind of like outsiders in society.
Again, we have a real problem as a species with others, right? And that's exactly what we were doing here. So this, I'm not going to say funny, but this is wild what happens next. So both Sarahs refute the claims completely. Like, they're not in consorting with the devils. They're good Puritan colonists. Tituba is mad about all this. And
rightfully
she dives
so.
right in and confesses to serving the devil. And she also says that you can get me, but there's several other among you that are witches consorting with the devil as well. And I won't tell you who they are. So the village goes wild with that.
Right.
So now it's between 1692. They think they figured it out. You know, there are witches. That's why the bad stuff in Salem's happening. There's so many new people here. Like, we have to take care of our own. So because of this perfect storm of events between 1692 and 1693, over 200 people in the old Salem town are accused of witchcraft, and 20 of them are actually executed before the law kind of puts a stop to it and says, like, this is crazy. What are we doing?
Right.
And this is actually going to take a moment, but I think instead of just turning this into a story, I'm going to read their names.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
It is important.
So here we go. Death by hanging. We have Bridget Bishop, Sarah Good, Rebecca
they
Nurse.
got Sarah.
Yep, they got the Sarah. We have Rebecca Nurse, who I know in Maine, a lot of people are related to Sarah Nurse. Rebecca Nurse. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Mm-hmm. We have Elizabeth Howe, Susanna Martin, Sarah Wilds, Reverend George Burroughs.
Ooh, the first man.
George Jacobs Sr., Martha Carrier, John Proctor, John Willard, Martha Corey, Mary Easty, Mary Parker, Alice Parker, Anne Pudiator, Wilmot Red, Margaret Scott, and Samuel Wardwell Sr. are all hung.
Okay.
Like, that's a huge chunk of people who did nothing wrong.
That's
right?
a lot of people. That's really horrible.
And then we have Giles Corey, who refused to enter a plea in court because the whole thing was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because he refused to enter a plea, whether it be guilty or not, he was pressed to death.
Right.
Which is, they added stones on top of stones on top of stones until he could no longer take a breath.
Yeah.
That was the Salem Witch Trials. So after those 20 people are executed, the trials kind of end as quickly as they begin because so many people had been accused of witchcraft in the town. It finally made people think this is what they called spectral evidence, and maybe we shouldn't put all of our faith in hearsay.
Yeah.
We can't execute every one of us. Something's wrong. So in 1693, the governor pardons the survivors of anyone who has been accused and says, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. And then in 1702, the entire event was deemed unlawful.
Okay, well, that's at least something, but
yeah, great, right?
Too little, too late.
Very late.
Yeah.
I didn't know this, but I'm happy to see it that in 1711, the courts say that the families of victims need to be compensated for the losses that were unfairly put on the people of Salem. And then in 2022, Elizabeth Johnson Jr. is the last person to be officially exonerated.
Did you say 2002?
2022,
2022?
Elizabeth Johnson Jr. is the last accused witch to be exonerated for her crimes, officially by the court.
Okay, so 350 years later.
Her grandchildren's children's children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's crazy. But there's also, before we move on to the next part of this, there's a fringe theory about what kicked this all off. Have you heard about the ergot?
Yes, I have.
Before?
The mold.
So ergot is a fungus that grows on rye, which is, when consumed, like in rye bread, which is what the Puritans were eating at the time. The symptoms include hallucinations, rigid limbs, convulsions, and more. So there's the thought that maybe the girls were poisoned, like not on purpose, obviously, but
right.
They were affected by this.
But you'd have to wonder, like, that would have probably just been a batch of rye bread, and this went on for a year.
For sure, which is why historians actually have come out and they've officially debunked the claim.
Yeah.
I think it's a really easy scapegoat to say, like, oh, people weren't at fault here. They were.
I mean, I'm sure, knowing people, I'm sure people were at fault.
Yeah, literally, like, exactly. We're living in a time right now where I think it's pretty easy to say that people were the problem.
Yeah.
But that is the Salem Witch Trials in a nutshell. And before I give you the birth chart for who we're going to talk about today, I'm going to give away the connection because I'm like kind of realizing right now that the connection to this person and talking about such a heavy topic where so many people lost their lives, it would give you emotional whiplash. So I would tell you that the reason why we're going to focus on this person is because they're actually a descendant from one of the witches who were executed.
Or the regular people who was accused of being a witch,
That's
potentially.
Right. Thank you for that. But that's why we're going to be talking about this person. And because it's going to be a wild connection once you hear it.
Okay.
So I don't have a time for you, but I have 12/5/1901, Chicago, Illinois.
Great. Okay, so we are looking at a person who is a Sagittarius sun with their moon in Libra. So they have the sun conjunct Uranus in Sagittarius and it's opposing Pluto. So this automatically tells me this is a person who doesn't follow the rules in life.
Okay.
Sun conjunct Uranus would give them very unique outlook. They would be bringing in a lot of new ideas, and opposing Pluto, like they're going to face challenges and jump over them.
Okay.
They're not going to be daunted by any challenges coming their way. And in fact, it might power them up.
I think so. Yeah.
To face challenges. They would find life a little boring, honestly, if there weren't challenges. And I don't want to say like, oh, maybe they didn't cause all their these problems or whatever, but there would have been a need in the personality to have goals to reach, and the idea of like stepping over a challenge would be motivational. They have a huge cluster of planets in Capricorn. So despite being a Sagittarius, they have so much going on in Capricorn. They have Chiron, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus all in Capricorn.
Is there a term for that when the planets all clump up like that?
Yeah, that would be a stellium.
Is this a stellium though?
It is a stellium, but it's not with all of those planets. So we have the stellium. The stellium proper is between Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. So just to clarify, the definition of a proper stellium is 3 or more planets that are conjunct in the same sign. So they're all together in the sky. So even though these are all in the sky, like in the realm of of Capricorn, they're kind of spread out a little bit, but those 3 in the middle are clumped up.
Okay.
So we have Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. So having Saturn conjunct Jupiter is a really interesting thing because they're such opposite planets, right? So Jupiter is all about expansion and positivity and possibility and optimism, and Saturn's more about restriction and ambition and working hard and having like willpower and holding yourself back and being maybe a little bit more realistic or even pessimistic. So having those together in conjunction would make you either really well balanced, or you would have like these very strong oppositions to your personality that would kind of swing back and forth.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and with Mars conjunct that too, that could affect them physically. There could have been periods of having great energy and ambition, and then periods of having like been slowed down by illness or by some other factor that could have affected the body.
Okay.
Then we have Black Moon Lilith conjunct Mercury in Scorpio. Black Moon Lilith conjunct Mercury would make this person likely well-spoken or a good writer, but also very passionate in the way that they communicate.
Okay. Yeah, totally.
Very, very passionate.
Very passionate.
I have Black Moon Lilith conjunct Mercury.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like,
and here we are.
Yeah, but not in Scorpio. And they have it in Scorpio, which is going to make it all the more intense.
Okay.
And very magnetic, almost sensual. I don't know if that's like fitting for this person, but there could be like a strong kind of attraction that they have for people they date or something.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they have if you're following along with us on YouTube, you'll see, and if not, I'll try my best to explain, the majority of the planets are in the lower hemisphere of the chart. Almost everything, minus a couple things, is down in that bottom sector. So when you have that, that typically means that you are more introverted or more focused on mental pursuits in your life.
Okay.
If you have more planets in the top hemisphere of your chart, it usually means you're more extroverted or more focused on dealing with people, networking, or doing things that are more like out there in the world.
That's really interesting because for this person, you would think it was the opposite, but it's actually exactly what you're talking about. Their actions were for tons of people, but their focus was on their passion. Does that make sense?
It does. And I have no idea who this is, but I'm excited to find out.
Could I ask you a question about their chart?
Yeah.
What would you say for art based on the planets?
For art, I mean, the thing about Black Moon Lilith and Mercury, that could, I mentioned writing, but that could also lend itself well to art for sure. There could be like more of a creative passion there. Sorry, I'm trying to open the chart fully again. It closed out of it.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're good. So you had given me a birth time for this person when you gave me the chart.
Oh, did I? I didn't write it down.
Okay. So I don't know if that's correct, but if it is, that stellium would be in the 5th house, which is the house of creativity. Oh, so that Capricorn stellium would be sitting right there. So there would have been a lot, like when we think about what we talked about with that, with Mars conjunct Saturn and Jupiter, there would be periods of great prolificness with that, but also periods of restriction.
That you nailed it.
Okay,
like I'm so glad you said that because that's going to add so much to the reveal here.
Okay,
and why I gave the kind of the addendum to we're switching from a heavy topic of Salem Witch to Walt Disney.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Walt Disney is the descendant of the 7th person hanged for witchcraft in Salem, Reverend George Burroughs.
I had no idea.
Right? Isn't that crazy?
I just got chills. So yeah, with the 5th house too, 5th house does govern children as well as creativity. So maybe that's, creating for children in some way.
Totally. And also we'll get into it here. He had kids. He loved his kids too. Yeah. He was obsessed with them. His art was really because he was passionate about art and children could enjoy it. You know? But more so, he was focused on his passions.
Okay. I love it.
Ready to dive into some history about Walt Disney himself?
Mm-hmm.
So he was born in the lovely suburbs just outside of Chicago, which you can kind of see that represented in, downtown Disney, Main Street, he wanted to recreate what he knew. Main Street, USA. So he was one of 5 siblings to parents Elias and Flora. He was first attracted to art when he was paid to draw a retired horse for a doctor in town. And he enjoyed the aspect of doing that so much, it really kicked off his passion for doing more of that and learning how to actually do it. So he started to mimic the cartoons that were in the weekly newspaper, sketching them out whenever it arrived to try to see if he could draw more and more and more.
That's awesome.
So it says that he started with pencils, but then was just enraptured by it, moved on to watercolors, paints, and more than that. In 1911, he moved to Kansas City, and he made friends with a boy at school whose family was into theater. And this was kind of his first exposure to vaudeville, which was really popular at that time.
Right.
But it was also his first exposure to a new technology called motion pictures.
Wow.
He was obsessed. He just thought it was so cool. So in high school, he continues drawing for the school newspaper and becomes their cartoonist, keeping his eye on those motion pictures the whole time, trying to figure out, is there a connection there? And then unfortunately, World War I breaks out. He felt so passionate about the war and the cause that he forged his birth date in order to join the fight. He was stationed with the Red Cross and became an ambulance driver. And he actually drew cartoons that they would stick to the side of the ambulance. And he also contributed to the Army newspaper called Stars and Stripes.
So that helped with morale.
That did. That was his Chiron coming out too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chiron in that 5th house too. Wanting to help heal spirits and keep people laughing. I feel like the 5th house Chiron, you're almost wanting to do that, even though things might be difficult, you're still looking for ways to make people smile.
Sounds exactly like what he was doing.
Yeah.
So after the war, he returns home and starts his career at an ad company, which utilized something called cutout animation. And so, again, keeping his passion and his focus on those motion pictures that he saw, this really captured his attention to see how he could adopt it with his own art. And he soon experimented at home with the cutout animation and mastered something that's now called cell animation. So he opened his own company and started producing what he called laugh-o-grams, which was cell animation of modern Aesop's fairy tales. So we can see how that turned into Disney, you know, like in what he was already doing naturally before the Disney company was founded. He then moves to Hollywood and opens the Disney Brothers studio with his brother Roy, and begins working with Universal Pictures on something called the Oswald the Rabbit series. And Universal stole that. Which is why we don't have Oswald the Rabbit anymore. If you look it up, it's actually really cute. It was Disney's first foray into cell animation before who we know, Mickey Mouse, came next because Walt Disney wasn't done and wanted to continue with his animation.
Wow, what if Mickey had never come to be and it was just Oswald the Rabbit? It would have
been Oswald the Rabbit.
Wow.
The whole time. So it's really cool because Mickey Mouse lets him just open up. He's able to provide ideas. He does the animation and he actually voices the original Mickey as well. He wasn't letting go of that IP, you know, like this was his. So, you know, we could go through his whole life, but we really know that he rose to fame, credibility, and opened the parks. You know, was so successful in everything that he did from here on out. He just needed to get to that Mickey moment.
Yeah.
Instead of talking about his entire life, I found some facts that I'm just going to pull out for you that, you know, maybe links into the star chart or stuff that I just found kind of appealing.
Okay.
So some fast facts about Walt Disney. He actually holds the most Academy Awards for any film producer to this date. He has 22 Academy Awards to his name. In World War II, he, in coalition with his work at Disney, he also produced anti-Nazi propaganda for films in the U.S. During that time. He was a high school dropout, just wasn't for him. He had a private apartment in Disneyland. I don't know if you've heard about this.
No.
It was above the fire station that's there in California. And his lamp in his window is left on as an homage to him, but also because when people turn the lamp off, it turns back on its own.
So do you think he's still linked?
People say that
there's an echo.
Absolutely. There's an echo still there in his apartment because he focused so much time and energy there. He wanted to see what was going on in the park. He wanted to watch people enjoying his creation.
That's a really neat little piece of lore. I like it.
When I went to Disneyland in California for the first time, I went to go see if it was real. And it's true. They have not touched his room. You can take tours of it and that lamp stays on.
That's amazing.
So I think we've all heard the conspiracy theory that when he died, his head was frozen so that like his brain could be, you know, reborn in another generation.
Yeah, like cryogenically.
Not at all.
Preserved.
He died in 1966 from lung cancer, and his body was cremated and buried in Glendale.
Okay.
So like that,
okay.
I'd have no idea where that cryogenic freezing comes from.
Yeah, that's pretty far out.
And I've heard it's so common knowledge that you wouldn't. I didn't question it. I just thought that was a weird thing that he did.
Yeah.
And then here's the last one for you. After his death, a strange note was found on his desk that to this day no one has any idea what it means.
Okay.
It was 2 words, and those 2 words were Kurt Russell.
Wait, when was Kurt Russell born?
I don't know. Actually, we should look that up.
Oh my God!
I read this interview. It says Kurt Russell also does not know why his name would be written there.
I'm looking it up right now. I mean, I feel like he would have been born, but like how well known was Kurt Russell?
Around 1966.
I'm pulling it up.
66.
We're going to find out. We're going to look this up together. Just give me 1 second for this to load. All right. He was born in 1951, so he would have been 15 years old.
Okay.
But let's find out where he was in 1966.
What was
going on?
What was Kurt Russell doing?
I just want to know if Disney like predicted Kurt Russell being
as amazing as he is.
Yeah. So he was born in Springfield, Massachusetts. So maybe they share some like similar ancestors, Massachusetts.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I'm really leaping here.
Isn't that crazy?
Let's see. Well, he was a child actor.
So he was probably known, there's probably some connection there through the studio.
So he had an uncredited part for It Happened at the World's Fair, playing a boy who kicked a pilot played by Elvis Presley in the leg.
Oh my God.
When he was a child. In 1963, he guest starred in the ABC series Our Man Higgins.
And ABC is owned by Disney.
Okay.
So there's a connection there.
And later he played the title role in the ABC Western series The Travels of Jamie McFeeters in 1963. So Disney probably saw that. Yeah, so he was acting at this point in time. I didn't realize. Oh my God. In 1966, he signed a 10-year contract with Walt Disney Productions.
Okay, so there was something, Walt Disney himself had plans for Kurt Russell.
Oh, okay. I just found the thing. One of the last things Disney ever wrote was the name Kurt Russell, although he misspelled it as Kirt.
Okay.
And yeah. Okay, and Walt Disney had described him as a 15-year-old boy for whom I predict a great acting future.
Nailed it.
Okay.
Nailed it, Disney.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's so many weird links. Kurt Russell, Disney, the Salem Witch Trials.
That's right. And that's what I have for you this week.
What a perfect theme for the week, because the week is all kind of like jumping from one thing to the other. And that's like we got from Salem Witch Trials to Kurt Russell somehow.
We're into that energy already.
Yeah.
That's it.
So now before we close out, I just have to ask, how's your need to pee now?
Unreal.
Okay, we're gonna get through these credits. We're gonna get out of here. Come find us on Patreon. We'll do a deep dive into Thor's hammer for you. You know what to do. The links for all that will be in the show notes, or stick around for the credits.
I'm gonna go.
Unclouded Eye stars Ashley Brooks and Ty Gowan. It's produced and directed by Nick Nordfors. Music by Ashley Jane Cecilia and Jay Karen. Our community manager is Aaron Cross. Art by Dawn Aquarius. Unclouded Eye is presented by Haunt Me. Follow us at Unclouded Eye on Instagram and TikTok, and unclouded_eye on Patreon. Special shout out to Court and Matt on Patreon. Thanks for all your support.